And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. This is our 140th episode, recorded on Monday, December 30th, 2024. I'm your host, Jeff Marlow, joined tonight by my co-host, Kathy Amos. And tonight we'll be discussing your Indiana Hoosiers win on Saturday over Wisconsin, 83-52. That brings their overall record to 10-3, and they are 2-0, still sitting atop the Big Ten with that 2-0 record along with some other teams. But we'll start our show the way we do every show with our proud banner moment. And Kathy, really there were several things I think I could have taken out of the game, but I guess I'll go to this one. On Saturday, Chloe Moore McNeil moved up the assist chart even more. She now is setting at fifth all-time in the all-time assists column, and as she continues to move up. So that's going to be our proud banner moment from Home Field Apparel. Our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, which includes the Assembly Call, Crimson Cast, X's and Joe's, and now the Dribble Drive. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. Not only do you get quality apparel, but you are supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelly School of Business. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23, HOME23, to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 to get 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And just a little bit of news.
Sorry. It's a good thing I have the new year to practice my podcasting skills, I guess.
Just one thing in the news that kind of concerns Indiana. The latest bracketology that Charlie Cream had out, which actually was right after our last show, so it's a little bit dated still, about a week old. Indiana was a 10 seed. They were one of the last of the buys. They were one of the last four buys. So that's really kind of the only thing I saw newsworthy. So we're going to throw it over to Kathy and get her Amos angle here and what she's got on her mind.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So, happy holidays to everyone out there, both coming out of any Christmas or Kwanzaa or whatever you happen to celebrate. Heading into New Year's Eve here tomorrow, it's kind of exciting. Ending the year on a great win here for Indiana. That moves them to 2-0 in the conference, and we'll talk a little bit later about, I guess, what's going on around the Big Ten as well. But this was a really great game. I thought they looked really good overall, really good ball movement. But I think I was almost more impressed on the defensive side. And of course, we'll get into it later in the game, but I thought the defense that they had against Wisconsin was really good. And so this was a really nice game to end the calendar year. I think, and head into the new year with UCLA kind of looming on our schedule around there. So, getting Sydney back and everyone back as for the most part is healthy outside of, I think the big question mark coming out of the game will be Yarden. I haven't seen any updates on what is going on with her, if it was her knee or ankle or not much, minor injury or whatever. But to me, that's probably going to be the biggest question coming out of this. But everyone else looked really good and nice and healthy coming out of that game.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Kind of keep an eye a little bit on Yarden, but I got the sense that she walked off pretty easily, mm-hmm. and I don't think that we'll see anything come this week. So let's jump with that. Let's go back into the Wisconsin game here from Saturday a little bit. And I really don't have any pivotal plays, but Kathy, I want to get your thoughts a little bit. Interesting first quarter. Wisconsin jumps out to a 4-1 lead, I think it was, and then Indiana mm-hmm. runs off a 20-2 run. Yep. And then Wisconsin finishes off with basically an 11-0 run. And so it ended up 21-17. And for me, the pivotal stretch was in the second quarter, a 21-6 run, or 21-6 quarter by the Hoosiers. And just kind of wanted to get your thoughts maybe about that those runs in the first quarter, but also the second and third quarter by Indiana.
Yeah, you know what, Jeff? Those were the big pivotal plays that I had talked about. We started out went on that 9-0 run after we were down 4-1. Ended up forcing a Wisconsin turnover. Like you mentioned, we had that 20-2 run in the first quarter. to be up 8-21 and then turned right around and it ended up only 17-21 to end the quarter. But boy, to hold a Big Ten team, and I understand Wisconsin is not projected to finish, towards the top of the pack this year, or maybe even in the middle of the pack, but to hold a team still to only 6 points in a quarter, I thought that said a lot about what happened probably at that timeout in between the first and second quarter, while we were still able to put up another 21 points to go into halftime, 23-42. To me, that again was kind of the name of the game for us on Saturday. I just thought defensively they really, really looked locked in from a high level, and we'll get into the numbers later. But some of the things, like we even threw in some 2-3 zone, and the first time we did that, actually twice in a row, I think. I'm not sure if they were back-to-back possessions, but I know the first time we went to a 2-3 zone, we ended up forcing a shot clock violation, and we forced one either right next in the next defensive possession or one shortly after, and that was in the third quarter. But there was some really good defensive stops, I thought, in this game that really said a lot about what the team is doing, right? We've always thought of Coach Morin's teams as defensive minded, and I think we're really starting to see that come together. Sarah Williams, as an example, for Wisconsin, is averaging 20 points a game, and we held her to only 13. So just all around, I thought the defense was really kind of the shining spot, at least for me, in this game.
Yeah. And we talked about in the preview last week when we kind of did the preview of Wisconsin, Ronnie Porter was averaging about 12 or 13 a game.
That's right.
Held her to 3 and stuff. So, you look at, where, the defense, like you said, Kathy, was outstanding. And I thought it looked as good. And again, I agree with you. Wisconsin isn't being picked to finish even middle of the pack, but this was a team that had won 5 in a row coming into that game. They had won their first game in the Big Ten. I mean, this was not a team that was lacking confidence a little bit. I thought the one thing I like seeing, especially even early on, was the tempo. I thought Indiana really pushed the pace. And even though they may have made some poor decisions in the transition a few times, I like trying to push the tempo and not allowing Wisconsin to kind of play a walk it up style or even defend in a walk it up style. And I thought that was a huge part of it as well. Then you go and look at, and we'll get into the numbers here in a second, but a lot of players got in, a lot of players contributed again. I thought that was big. Get your thoughts about, at least the depth we were showing on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, we pretty much emptied the bench. The only person that didn't get in was Charnice Curry-Jelks. I did not see her play, and she's not shown up in the box score, but we still played 6 people off of our bench. And 4 of them played double-digit minutes. So Carolyn Striplin, Jules LaMandola, Hannah Sandvik, and Lexi Bargesser. And this goes again to what I think we were talking about after during the last podcast when we covered off Bellarmine and the other game. How it just feels like we have a little more depth, like reliable depth, and to rely on this year in terms of production, to your point. So production, getting 9 players in is really great, but having 9 players play double-digit minutes in these games, especially a conference game. Again, I get Wisconsin is probably not the level of competition we're going to see all year in the conference, but it's still a Big Ten opponent. And to be able to get 9 players in, 4 of them in double digits in scoring, and a lot of them getting really great minutes, to me shows a lot of growth, especially not just from last year, Jeff, but even just from November, right? You think back to the Harvard and the Butler games, and, we had some concerns, and I think this team has really turned it around, and they look completely different than what we saw early on in the season.
Oh, I agree with that. And I think that part of that is, and again, we're going to dive into some of the numbers I think will help explain some of that. But I was having a conversation over the weekend with some family and who are huge basketball fans. And my niece, for example, who played at Butler and is very close with Terry, with Coach Morin, because Coach Morin was an assistant at Butler when my niece played there, and just agreed that IU did not deserve to win that game in Indianapolis from the get-go. Even though they had a lead at a couple different points, they didn't play well. They didn't look like they were really there in totality, and just didn't. But the Harvard game, we've talked about this, and again, in conversation with other people, I'm not sure that Harvard loss is going to look as bad. Now, part of that's going to be dependent upon them winning the Ivy and getting into the tournament. But still, Harvard's done enough here, I think, throughout the season. But I agree with you. And I think that's one thing that caught this fan base off guard a little bit, was that everybody just assumed Terry Morin's teams weren't going to hit bumps in the road. You were just going to win 25, 28 games because you went out there and it said Indiana across the chest. And this team had to find its identity a little bit. I'm not sure it still really has totally found its identity, but we've gotten a whole lot closer in the last month, really going back to the trip to the Bahamas. I think that really kind of ends up being the turnaround is what we'll point at the end of the year for this team, is that trip to the Bahamas. Somehow they found something to start building off of, and we're seeing that as we go through. So we'll see, and we're going to find out on Saturday at 11 o'clock Central, noon Eastern, just how much we may be right. But Kathy, let's kind of jump over to the numbers. And since I'm hosting tonight and you're producing, I'll let you kind of start here. Let's kind of start with team numbers, but you take the first one.
Yeah, I think the first one that I already mentioned, we already talked a lot about our bench play and the quality that we got out of them. I think the other one I really want to hone in on is, again, two things I think of with Coach Morin's teams. One is defense, which I've already touched on. The second one is what she calls sharing the sugar, right? So assists. We had 25 assists to 32 made field goals.
Yep.
And that is the ratio that, we really want to continue seeing, because we weren't seeing that early on in the year. To your point, we were not seeing the ball movement and the tempo that we're used to seeing. And this they came out, they pushed the pace from the beginning until the last buzzer went off. And to me, 25 assists on 32 made field goals is fantastic ratio, and I loved seeing that. So those were some really good things that I enjoyed seeing as well. Defense, as shown by the 10 blocks. So we were having a nice block party, right? So defense, 10 blocks, and then our assists, 25 assists to 32 made field goals.
And I'm going to kind of stay on that ball handling part of it. We forced 18 turnovers, only committed 8. So therefore, we won the points off turnover battle 24-9. Excuse me. And that really, to me, helps play into that tempo part of it and being able to push the pace, because we were creating some turnovers. And again, I like seeing, that's a number I like to see, or that's a stat I like to keep it a little bit of an eye on, is that points off turnovers. Because what are you doing with those turnovers when you get them? So you look at that, you were basically, what is that, about 1.3, 1.4 points per turnover, that you were getting, because you got 24 points off 18 turnovers. So, and that's, that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess on the flip side of the positive, most of this I think are positive. The one that is still concerning to me is the rebounds. We got out rebounded again here, 33-30. And again, when we get into talking about our upcoming opponents, it was fine in this game against Wisconsin, but you start getting into those top half of the Big Ten teams. I think that the lack of rebounding is eventually going to come back to kind of haunt us. So I'd like to see that ratio flipped. And at least, we were fairly even in this game, which was okay, but I would like to be able to see us come out on the rebounding margin more often going forward if we can. But again, that seems to have been a common theme here that we've been talking about this year. But that's just one place. Again, I'm nitpicking at this point in this game, because overall I thought this was a really complete game. So that's the one negative from a team perspective that I kind of honed in on.
Yeah, I kind of took it from the positive standpoint that I think Wisconsin was like a +7, almost a +8 on rebounding. So we held it to a -3. So I thought that was a win in terms of not just getting pounded on the glass. And outside of Sarah Williams, they were, who had her normal double, but still, you just felt like you mentioned at the beginning. Yeah. I don't want to say invisible, but really felt like we took her out of what she's capable of doing. And I'll take that any day of the week. I'm going to go back to the defense here a little bit, Kathy, and just talk about something, as you were mentioning. We held them to 35% shooting for the game. The 20% in that second quarter, but overall 35% for the game. So again, the defense being locked in was showing up in a stat that was very vital.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And on the flip side of that, right, Jeff, like our shooting, we were concerned a little bit at the beginning of the year of our 3-point shooting, but boy, they really righted the ship on that as well. We shot 50%, 9 of 18 from 3-point land, and excuse me, and 53% overall for field goals, 32 of 60. And the free throw shooting has been doing pretty well too, 71% as well, getting to the line 14 times. So I'd like to see a little more than 14 free throws, but when you're shooting 9 of 18 from 3-point land, you're probably not going to get quite fouled quite as much as if you were driving the ball all the time. So those are some really good shooting numbers that I like to see. And to your point, 34% for Wisconsin and 53% for us. That's definitely the right side of the meter that you want to be on there.
That should be a winning combination in most games.
Yes.
Also, I'm going to go to points in the paint here, 42-20. And again, we talked about Sarah Williams and the McCray girl in the preview last week, and really we're kind of worried about what they could possibly do inside. And here we ended up like with doubling them in points in the paint. 42-20. So again, a lot of positives here, and we're going to talk about some of the individuals here in a little bit. But I just really, especially from that second quarter on, this was a team that really looked like it was in sync for once.
Yeah, absolutely. We even the third quarter too, 24-11, we outscored Wisconsin. We outscored them in all three of the four quarters, and really the fourth quarter ended up being a push. And by then we had put in a lot of our subs by halfway through that fourth quarter, and so the fact that our subs came in and still maintained that lead in that fourth quarter to me was really a great sign as well. Yeah,
and you look at the other stat here, 37 minutes that we led. That was the amount of time that we led was 37 minutes. So with that, if you don't have any other team stats, Kathy, I'll let you go first on the individuals.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of places you could go here. One of the people I want to start with is one of our bench players, and that's Jules Lamandola. Yeah. The commentators in particular were really high on her, and I've been really singing her praises here lately as well. And this was another nice game for Jules, I thought. Coming in off the bench, she gave us 11 minutes, shot 3 from the field, including a 3-pointer, made one of her free throws. She only shot one, had 3 rebounds, an assist, and only 1 foul, and she ended up with 8 points. So overall, just a nice, solid line from Jules, really showing nice growth from her freshman into her sophomore year. I think she's really benefited from that extra playing time. She obviously got to start when Sydney was out hurt. And I think that's really benefited Jules. So I'm really enjoying watching her play. So she's one of my favorite people to watch come in and off at the bench at least at this juncture. So it could change. We all have a lot of favorites, but she's currently one of my favorite subs right now.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Shea Chesky here a little bit. I mean, I think we could talk about Shea quite a bit, but she played fairly well, 14 points. She had 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals, but she brings a certain dynamic to this team that really, and I don't want to say it's Sarah Scalia like. I think it's a little different. And there are times that it also, though, when Sarah with that mid-range game where she'll pull up on the break, and I'm kind of like, is that really the shot we were looking for? And when it goes in, you're like, yeah, nice shot. But then there are times, obviously the few times when it doesn't go in, but there's just an energy there that she plays with. And we talked about this in the preview during the season, or at the beginning of the season, or in the off season, about how would it affect defensively? Because we knew she'd played in the Big Ten, but she's still on the smaller side, about 5'7". They list her at officially, but it hasn't shown up on the defensive end to be a liability yet. And she finds a way to really get into the seams offensively. She obviously can knock down threes, but she's not just a 3-point specialist. She's getting to the rim. She's getting into the mid-range. So I really thought Shea played fairly well on Saturday. And again, in a normal game, we might've been talking about her for some game balls, but those type of awards, and maybe we will, but I wanted to throw Shea out there right now in terms of that.
Yeah. And to your point with Shea, her 14 points, none of those were 3-pointers. They were, she only took 1. 9 of her field goals were all 2-point range, and she made 6 of them plus both her free throws. So yeah, in addition, like you mentioned, she had the assists and a few steals. I think she overall had a nice complete game. So I guess the other person I want to kind of touch on is Caroline Striplin. She came in off of the bench with 15 minutes. She only put up 2 points. This wasn't quite the game for her, but it's kind of nice having her and Lily as like these kind of bookends, right? Where the last 3 or 4 games, Caroline has come in and put up some really monster numbers, and we didn't need Lily. Saturday was Lily's night. Putting up her 20 points. So we didn't need Caroline to come in and put up the huge numbers. So overall, I thought she was okay. It wasn't her best game, but I do think that she's been a great asset coming on off of the bench as well. The other person I do definitely want to touch on is Henna Sandvik coming on off of the bench again. She came in, gave us 16 minutes. She had 2 field goals, which included another 3-pointer. a couple of blocks in there as well. I think, again, Henna's growth in the last month or so has been really astounding, and I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing from her, because I wasn't quite sure, at the beginning of the year, she looked a little out of sorts, especially defensively. I think she has found her footing at this point and figured out her role coming in off of that bench. And, again, with the 2 blocks where, again, there were 10 blocks total. We were having quite the block party, but Henna Sandvik putting up 2 of those blocks, I thought was just a really nice defensive game from her this time. And in addition, showing she can shoot the ball a little bit and keep the other defense a little bit honest as well. Again, I know it's only 5 points, but it does show she can shoot the ball and they can't just sag off of her. So again, she has become one of my favorite people as well to come in off of the bench. So really enjoying the growth that we're seeing from her in season, really.
Yeah, I'll go to a certain degree. I'm going to go back to Chloe Moore McNeil here as well. She was probably maybe one of the few who did not shoot it well. She was only 1 for 6 from the field, but she was 4 for 6 at the line. But she had 7 assists, only 1 turnover, and also 2 steals. So even though it wasn't necessarily showing up shooting, Chloe was able to contribute in ways that made positive impact on the game. So I wanted to make sure we talked a little bit about Chloe's game, as we already mentioned her in the banner moment. But 7 assists, that led the team on Saturday. So I don't have any other individual type numbers to look at,
Sure.
Kathy. So we'll throw it over to you, unless you do.
No, probably we'll cover them here in the game ball.
Yeah, that's what it's kind of what I was figuring. So
yeah.
I'm going to throw it over to you for the game. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So here we go. I'll just read them off since I'm yapping already. So in terms of game ball, if you're watching on the feed, you can see the ticker at the bottom, but for those of you just listening, I'll read it off in terms of game ball numbers. So far this year, Yarden Garzone and Shea Chesky each have 3. Sydney Parrish, Lily Meister, and Caroline Striplin each have 2. So Jeff, this one actually ended up being kind of a hard for me to decide between. I ended up, I think, because of the full production, I ended up with Lily. I thought Lily had a really nice game in this one. And again, 20 points, led the team in scoring. She had a block of her own, only 1 turnover, 3 fouls, but she did 9 of 13 shooting from the field and made 2 of 3 free throws. So to me, again, I thought she put up some nice numbers and she looked really comfortable in this game. Like she wasn't pressing, she wasn't trying to do too much. She again knew her role, and as a result they were really in the second half, I think, really targeting getting her the ball, and she was able to finish it and put up some good productive numbers. So for me, Lily gets my vote for game ball tonight.
Yeah, the other person I considered here was Yarden, and Yarden had 13 points and 7 rebounds that led the team. She had 5 assists. She had 4 blocks that led the team on Saturday. So I was, those were the 2 I had here, but I really was going to go with Lily as well, just because the scoring, but also just I think this is what we've been waiting for, is for Lily to, and I know she tied a career high. She's had already a couple times this year, but I felt like Saturday it was as smooth as I've seen Lily play all year. And she was willing to shoot the jump shot. She took a 3 and missed it, but I'm okay with that. If it helps to spread and stretch the defense out a little bit. So, yeah, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with Lily here as well. 20 points in 22 minutes, by the way.
That's right. It was very efficient. I don't think it was a bad 3 either. Like when she shot the 3, it wasn't like I said there, I'm like, oh, don't shoot that. Like it really was in the flow of the game. I know she missed it, but she's made a couple 3s earlier this year. So to me, absolutely. I had no issues with her taking that shot either. So all right. Well, congratulations then to Lily. That gives her her 3rd game ball for the year.
So then we go on to the Grace Berger hardest worker here. And if you're following on the ticker, a little bit, Chloe Moore McNeil leads the way with 3. Lily Meister has 2, along with Yarden Garzone with 2. And then Caroline Striplin, Shea Chesky, Jules Lamondola, Sydney Parrish, and Henna Sandvik each have 1. So Kathy, we're going to throw it over to you. Let you go first here on the hardest worker.
Yeah. So first, that's great. Yeah. So before I give you my vote, after hearing all the names, that really just kind of solidifies what we were already saying earlier, again, last podcast and tonight, about our depth that we're having. What is that, like 7-8 different people that we've given our Graceberger Hardest Worker to award to. So anyway, for me tonight on the Wisconsin game, I am going to go with Yarden Garzone. I was the same as you, Jeff. It was, I was debating between Lily and Yarden. I thought Yarden had a really nice, complete game, and I ended up landing on her for hardest worker because of her defense. I thought she was really, again, locked in defensively. She didn't have any steals, but she had 4 blocks. And then you turn that over and only 2 fouls, which is something we've seen, as a problem for Yarden, is that her propensity to foul. And she did not do that in this game. She played really controlled. She had great defense. She had great instinct in terms of timing, I thought. And then in addition to that, she threw in 7 defensive rebounds. And then on the offensive end, 13 points and 5 assists. So overall, and only 1 turnover. Did we touch on that? Only 8 turnovers? Yeah, you did.
I said that.
Points on it. That's right. So only 1 turnover from her as well. And so I thought she had a really great, complete game on both ends of the floor. And so that just made me really happy to see that out of Yarden. So for her, I am voting for her for my Graceberger Hardest Worker.
Yeah, the other person I was thinking of here was Sydney. Yeah. Sid was 5 for 6, 3 of 4 from deep for her 13 points. She had 2 rebounds. She had 3 assists. She had 2 steals. And she didn't commit a turnover. But I'm with you. I'm going to go with Yarden here. That's going to give Yarden her 3rd hardest worker of the game award. Her hardest worker of the game award for the year. So congrats to Yarden. But I agree. It really came down to whoever I didn't go with for the game ball. And like I said, it was Lily and Yarden here, but I also thought we want to make sure we mentioned Sid's contributions as well, since I'd already talked about Shea a little bit earlier. So we're going to throw it over to Kathy real quick, because Kathy's kind of the numbers guru here on the numbers watch. She's going to update us on a couple things.
Yeah. So Jeff already talked about Chloe in the beginning here. So she is now up to 5th in the the assist record. So she started out 10th in the year. She's now up to 5th. I don't think she's going to get past that. To get to 4th place, she would have to get 528. She only has 400 only. She has 416 right now. So she would need another 112 this year, which
to get to 4th.
It could be.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a huge gap from 5th to 4th. So to go from 416 to 528, but regardless, she's going to continue moving up in that 5th spot for sure. I she's been putting up some monster assist numbers. Her last 2 games alone, she had 15. So congratulations to her with her 7-point as well. She's now up to 943 points. So 57 points away from the 1,000 point mark. Then flipping over to Yarden with her 13 points, she is now at 911 points all time in her career. So she's only 89 points away from that 1,000 mark. So, in the next 6 or 7 games, we could see Yarden surpassing that 1,000 mark. But what she did do with her 3 3-pointers was that she moved up to 9th now in 3-pointers made all time. So she's up to 168, which surpassed the 167 that was 9th. So next on her list would be 8th place. She only needs 4 more to tie for 8th place all time. So that's kind of where we're at with those 2 ladies that we've been kind of watching some numbers on.
So let's take a quick look at our upcoming opponent here, which is going to be going from the deep into the deep end of the pool here in Big Ten play. The number 1 ranked, they will be, because the ranking, I'm assuming, came out today, and I didn't check it, but the number 1 ranked team in the country coming into Bloomington on Saturday, national telecast. It's going to be a noon start, 11 Central Time, 11 a.m. Central on Fox. So you're going to get the full bull here, which last year this didn't always work out well for us in nationally televised games. So hopefully it'll be a little better. But head coach Corey Close of UCLA, her 14th season at UCLA, and overall 300 wins, 140 losses, a 681 winning percentage. They've made 7 of the last 9 NCAA tournaments and have been to the Sweet 16 a handful of times over that run. The last game out, they just pounded Nebraska in LA, 91-54. And then they host Michigan at Pauley Pavilion on New Year's Day. So they're going to play between now and Saturday. And that might be a little bit of a plus, that they're going to have to play on New Year's Day, assume they're going to fly out maybe on Thursday, and have to play again on Saturday on the road at a relatively early start. That you're talking, if I'm doing my times right, that's a 9 a.m. Pacific time start. So, so you're maybe we can catch a little bit of a break here, but this is the number one team in the country for a reason, folks. This team, we talked about them back in the offseason. We previewed the teams coming in. This team is absolutely loaded. Now, that doesn't mean I think they're going to win the national tournament, the NCAA tournament, but they are definitely going to be a part of that mix in the conversation. There's just not, barring a lot of injuries. Now, saying that, I'm going to let Kathy kind of hit the highlights here on their best players. But Lauren Betts has missed a couple games here recently. Now, she played against Nebraska. Kiki Rice has missed a couple games, but they're just so talented and so deep. Right now, it just doesn't matter. I watched them play, I think it was Creighton, and they blew Creighton out of the gym without Lauren Betts even playing. So, I mean, it's just, this team is deep. They're loaded. They're talented. Indiana's going to have to, I really want to get this game. We need a rocking Assembly Hall, but it's going to be a fight, and we got to come ready to fight for 40 minutes. So, Kathy, why don't you hit their individuals here a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So there's 4 players we should talk about. Jeff mentioned 2 of them. So Lauren Betts, she is a 6'7" junior. She's center. She is averaging right at 20 points per game and 9.8 rebounds. So just under a double-double for her. She continues to climb up on those rebounds. I'm sure she'll start averaging that here at some point in the year. But she's very effective, 62% field goal percentage. One of her blemishes is her free throw shooting. So if you can get her to the line, she's only shooting 59%. Not that we want to get her to the line because we don't want to get in foul trouble. So kind of an interesting balance there. But if she does not making them at a great clip. And then on the guard side, they have Kiki Rice. She's a 5'11" junior. She is averaging 13 points per game, just at 3 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists. She is also very effective in her field goal shooting at 60% from field goal range and 38% from 3. Then continuing on with their guards, they have Gabriella Jaquez. Jaquez. Okay, thanks. 10.6 points per game. She's got 5 rebounds per game. She is also shooting 55% field goal percentage, including 31% from 3. And she is very effective from the line at 88%. So if it comes down to having to foul people at the end, I guess we'll want to try to get Lauren Betts and not Gabriella. And then Janiyah Barker to round this off as the 6'4" junior forward. She is also averaging double digits at 10 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. So very close to averaging a double-double for her as well. 48% field goal percentage, including only 65% from free throws. So interesting kind of dichotomy there with some of their larger or taller players not shooting real well from free throw, but really, really effective field goal percentage, which we'll talk about here as a team.
Yeah, and I will just kind of piggyback here a little bit. They're all juniors that we just talked about. These are all kids that theoretically should be able to come back next year. And so this is a team that's not going to be a one-year wonder here. This is a team that's built right now to be on the long haul. And their point guard, who leads them in assists, I didn't put her name on the list, is a freshman from Finland or Norway, something like that. I can't.
Yeah,
and it's like, yeah, and she's she's not scoring a ton for them. She's almost a traditional point guard. But with this team, you don't need a point guard to score 15 a game. Nope. They are absolutely loaded. Betts is a preseason All-American. Rice was a preseason, at least getting some some kind of votes in the preseason All-American. Mm-hmm. So you've got talent here, and Corey Close has done a really good job of putting this group together over the last several years at Poly in Westwood, and they are a legit team. Obviously at the top, and it's going to take it. And I don't care who's playing. It's going to take a really good effort to beat them on a given night. Now, the one thing that I think is their Achilles heel a little bit is looking at it. Some of them don't shoot the free throw very well. Now, a couple of them do. I didn't put Rice's in, but I think Rice is above an 80% free throw shooter along with Jaquez. And so there's kids who can make them, but kids who play a lot and get the ball in their hands a lot, like Betts, in a close game at the end, that could be an Achilles. So we'll keep an eye on that as they go through the season with it. And we'll kind of split this up here on the team stuff a little bit, Kathy. Yeah. I'll take the first couple and then let you kind of go as well. On the Her Hoop Stats website, UCLA is 4th in their rating. Indiana's 21st. I mean, Indiana, again, for those 2 bad losses, the Indiana's really kind of overcome it. Helped to beat Baylor. It's helped to beat Stanford, and things like that. Offensively, UCLA averages 83.5 a game. That's 18th in the country. Indiana's averaging 72.8, which is 67th. And then defensively, UCLA only gives up 50.9. That's 5th in the country. So they're a top 20 offense, a top 5 defense. Indiana gives up 61.1, not a lot, 110th. Again, you can get in there, but Indiana's, I can live with that 61, it's with that from there. So Kathy, why don't you take the next couple? But again, this is something where I think we're really going to keep an eye on Saturday is basically how offensively can we do anything to make UCLA uncomfortable, and then defensively can we make them uncomfortable, because this is a team that's just rolling on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that I think that segues right next into one of the stats we want to talk about, which is tempo. So UCLA is ranked 105th in tempo compared to Indiana at 252nd. So I think us controlling the tempo is going to be an interesting storyline to watch. And to the points we were making earlier with the individual stats, UCLA shoots 49.6% field goal percentage, which is 5th in the nation as a team. So it wasn't just a couple of people that are shooting really efficiently, and their effective field goal percentage is 54.9%, which is 10th in the country. Not that Indiana is all that bad this year either. 45%, which is 48th, and effective field goal percentage of 52%, which is 45th. So we're right there as well. The one place that I saw trying to look at some of the stats that might be something to look at is they're not good at 3-point shooting, at least comparatively. Like they shoot 32.5% from 3, which is 123rd. This is one of the stats we were actually better than them at, where we are shooting 34.9, which is 54th. The interesting thing is that the UCLA's opponent 3-point field goal percentage is 28.1%, which is only 85th in the country. So I'm wondering if that might be a place we can kind of exploit with them. So I'm hoping maybe we can find a crease there, and hopefully our 3-point shooting that we've seen the last few games keeps continuing to show up here on Saturday. Rebounding, something we talked about already with the Wisconsin game. We got out rebounded. UCLA is out rebounding their opponents 20.2%, or not percent, by 20.2 rebounds per game, which is obviously first in the country, where Indiana is right at a rebounding margin of +5. And then the last one, I guess, Jeff, is 1.8 turnover margin for UCLA and 0.7 rebounding margin for Indiana. So definitely on paper, it looks very lopsided, but again, I'm hopeful being at home, we'll be able to utilize that crowd.
Yeah. Turnover margin, is one thing that this UCLA team is not a team that really turns you over a ton. But they don't turn it over either. And you talk about their 3-point field goal percentage, but they're still averaging 83.5 a game, even though they don't shoot the 3 very well. So this is a team that offensively is very, very efficient inside the arc, and especially inside. I think if we were go back and look at like points in the paint, right, I'll bet they have a huge advantage of points in the paint,
I'm sure,
cumulative over the season with that. So yeah, we know you, and we talked about this. We said at the beginning of the season, UCLA was going to be one of the best teams we saw in the conference all year, that they were going to be a top 5 preseason team. Here they are. They've ratcheted up to number 1. They're 13-0 coming into the night, or into tomorrow. They're 2-0 in the league. So, they're going to be, they're the real deal. This is not a fluke, to see UCLA doing this. So let's take a quick run around the Big Ten, Kathy, and I'll kind of recap a little bit, and I'll let you go through some of the upcoming stuff. On the 28th, which was Saturday as well, Illinois 64-59 win over Oregon in Champaign. And we already mentioned UCLA 91-54 victory over Nebraska. That was also on the 28th. Yesterday, Sunday, USC a 78-58 win over Michigan at USC. Home teams have been really feasting right now in the Big Ten. Maryland a 72-66 win over Michigan State. That was a top 25 matchup there between Maryland and Michigan State. And then upcoming, the one game I really had on here, Kathy added one to the run list. She threw in Nebraska and USC on New Year's Day after the way Nebraska played against UCLA. I'm not sure how good that game's going to be, but we'll throw that one in there. And we already talked about Michigan and UCLA in Pauley Pavilion on New Year's Day. So Kathy's going to kind of run through the net here real quick for us.
Yeah.
And the Big Ten is absolutely loaded here.
That's right. And I didn't even go through the whole 18 teams. I just went through all of the net ratings. What I did was I looked up the current net rankings, and I have them listed out. This is not order of Big Ten conference, right? So I don't want anyone to confuse this with conference standings, because they certainly are not matching up right now. So I'm just going to run through this real quick because I found this kind of interesting to look at, because as we continue to get into the heart now of conference play kicking in January, things I'll be watching for, like, and that's why I added that Nebraska game, because Nebraska and Michigan are both out in California right now. They're just flip-flopping opponents.
Right.
So clearly they're staying out there for New Year's. I'm assuming they're staying out there for New Year's Eve anyway. They're not going to fly back and then fly back again. So they're spending New Year's Eve out in California. Nebraska got thumped by UCLA. Can they turn that around now and do something a little better with USC? Michigan, I watched a good chunk of that game against USC, and they kind of hung in there until, kind of late into the third quarter. And then, boy, USC just ratcheted up, and you had Juju Watkins putting up another 30 points again. So now how does Michigan do? Can they turn around, after being ranked 23rd in terms of AP ranking? Can they turn that around against UCLA? So that's why I put some of those upcoming games to kind of watch for in the first. But okay, net rankings. UCLA at 2-0 is third in net rankings. USC also 2-0 is 7th. Ohio State 2-0 as 10th. So, the top three are the top three according to net rankings, what we expected before the year. An interesting one sitting at 16th in the net is Michigan State. Michigan State obviously is now 1-1 with that loss that Jeff already mentioned. And then you have 21st is Maryland at 2-0. 23rd is Michigan with their now 1-1 loss. And then the interesting one was Minnesota sneaking in at 28th in the net. They're sitting 1-1 in the conference. I expect that to probably come down here as we continue to go into play. But when I looked that up today, I was kind of surprised to see them as high as 28th. So what is that, Jeff? I think I counted before we get to Michigan, that it's 7 teams in the top 25 in the net rankings. And then after that, you have Minnesota at 28th, Iowa's at 31st, Nebraska 35th, Illinois 36th, Oregon 38th, and then Indiana finally comes in there at 39th. So we're currently the 14th ranked net ranking anyway, even though we are sitting at 2-0. So again, it's early, but I found it interesting as, I wanted to capture these before we get into the heart of Big Ten play, because I think a lot of this is going to change. I expect Oregon to probably drop. I expect Minnesota to drop. Then the question marks are going to be, what happens with Nebraska? Can they right their ship after their loss? I think Indiana hopefully will start climbing up that list, on the net ranking. I think the Butler one's probably keeping it down a bit. And then the Oregon one is also interesting to me. They had a couple of really good non-conference wins, but now they started out 0-2 in the conference. So they're sitting at 38th. I would expect when we look at this in a couple of weeks, that might change and they'll probably drop. So again, it doesn't mean a whole lot sitting here on December 30th, but it is a something to put a pin in, and we'll probably update these, from time to time as we continue to go through the Big Ten ranking. And I just want us to have a point of comparison. So that's really why I put those in there.
Well, a little bit of a disconnect here, though, because I think Maryland last week was number 8 in the AP poll. They were like 8th or 9th. And so there's a little bit of disconnect. And I know that they aren't necessarily going to go hand in hand, but you look at the AP top 25, the Big Ten had 4 in the top 10. I mean, it was UCLA, USC, Ohio State, and Maryland. And then, so those were the top 4. And interesting, you talk about Iowa at 31st, and even though Iowa's had a pretty good start to their season. So that's interesting, Kathy, that you dug into the net there a little bit. About, let's face it, roughly halfway home here. We've played 13 games, so we're just a little less than halfway, but you figure 30 games for the season. So we're almost at that point as we get there. So that the net will start taking shape a little bit more as well. But I agree with you. A couple teams I think we'll see. Oregon, Minnesota's one I think we'll see drop. And then the rest of it is just the Big Ten going to beat up on each other. It's just going to beat up on each other and how it shakes out. So, Kathy, I'll throw it over to you. You got any final thoughts here for us tonight, talking about the Wisconsin game or anything we got coming up with UCLA?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is going to be quite the dichotomy, right? We have Wisconsin coming in where we really handled what we needed to handle. We handled our business, right? 83-52 win. This is a nice springboard and hopefully a little bit of a few days break here to enjoy the New Year's. And then, welcoming UCLA in on Saturday is a big change, but at least we had a whole week here to prepare for UCLA. Hopefully, again, our crowd is really into it. I think a couple of the keys I'll be looking for is, can they find a way to not have UCLA out rebound us by 20? I think if we see that, I think it might be a long night for us. And if we're hitting our 3-pointers is going to be another one. But you're right, Jeff. I think this UCLA game, anybody, not just us, is going to have a complete game from tip off into the last buzzer, and very, very few mistakes to keep up with this UCLA team. So we'll really see if this last month of how much this improvement is really continued to take hold, because if you would have again asked me in early-ish mid-November, I don't want to see this game, to be quite honest with you. But now, I'm not dreading it or anything like that. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing how we hang with UCLA. I think they really righted the ship, as you mentioned. We have Sydney back, hopefully. Thanks, by the way, to Danny in the chat here. He said the Indy Star reported that Yarden hurt her ankle. No report, of course, on how bad it is. So hopefully she's had this week to get rehab and she's able to come back as well. So if we have Sydney playing again like she has been, and we have Yarden come back and being okay on her ankle, I think we can at least give UCLA a chance here with us. We have a puncher's chance, right? So I'm looking forward to this game. I really want to see how we do handling Lauren Betts inside, though. I think that's going to be quite a challenge as well.
Yeah, a big win, nice win over Wisconsin. Again, getting to 2-0 is better than being 1-1. And Wisconsin, even though we don't think they're going to be middle of the pack, it was a kind of a dangerous game because they had a lot of confidence coming in. I'm more concerned about Lauren Betts. Betts at 6'7" is going to have a decided height advantage over anybody we put in there. Striplin may actually match up a tad better with her here, but you got to be able to control Lauren Betts here. You can't let her go get 20 and 10 easily. If she gets it, she's got to work for it. And then that also kind of goes into the rebounding margin. You cannot get beat by 20 on the glass this weekend. You've got to battle. You got to find a way to keep that to a -5, a -10. Make some shots. Turnovers are going to be huge for me. I'm going to keep an eye on turnovers, turnovers, because again, UCLA doesn't necessarily force a lot of turnovers, but in games we haven't played well, we've just kind of given it away. And so we got to do that. But I'm really interested to see how we try to defend Lauren Betts and with that and how effective it will be, because to me, Lauren Betts has to be, when I say control, you just can't Lauren Betts can't go get 30, 30, 35. We got to keep her, right around the average or a little under. So that'll be a big key for me.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So coming up, our next episode of Doing the Work will be on Sunday. We'll be back on Sunday. We cannot do a post-game show right after the game on Saturday. I have a commitment pretty much as soon as that IU game's over. I got to be out the door for heading toward the gym for a game of my own. So, but we'll be back on Sunday evening, 8:00 Eastern, 7 Central, to discuss the UCLA game. Hopefully a victory, but hopefully just a good game as well that we can kind of point to as like, yes, even if you lose, you're like, okay, those are things we can take out of it. So we'll be back on Sunday, January 5th, 2025 to discuss the UCLA game. If you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, be part of the Workaholics, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@Backhome Network, youtube.com/@Backhome Network. You can be a part of our private community as well. Find out more at assemblycall.substack.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logos. Thank you to Bob Thompson. For designing for our music that you heard throughout the broadcast. And also thank you for listening wherever you're listening or watching us on YouTube. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Sunday. Until then, keep your elbow in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers.
All right.
All righty.
Hi, Mom. No mom's watching live tonight, so I had to get that in for her. Awesome. Well, good, Jeff. I guess we'll talk with everybody next year. So enjoy your New Year's Eve, and everyone have a fun time out there. Be safe. And do whatever you're doing, or just don't get caught, whatever is
Said like a parent.
Yes. My husband and I will be spending it down in New Orleans. So, but we'll be back in time for this UCLA game. So be exciting time.
Have a good trip. Everybody have a happy new year.
All right. Good night, everyone.